Welcome one, welcome all to week 2 of the Ferrari GT3 Challenge Series, and we are at a doozy of a circuit this week. We're at Sebring, and it's one of my favourite tracks. It's epic. Just you really feel the bumps through the wheels. It's just a circuit where you can get kind of close to the walls, but you can really attack corners. Suits these GT3 cars down to the ground. I think you're going to love this. If you don't own it, please buy it. There's a Sebring 12-hour endurance race as well this week, so plenty to look forward to there. Right, without further ado, let's look at the lap. Okay, this is the hot lap, a 2 minutes point 6. I think this will be fairly competitive. I had my optimal down to 2 minutes, but it's very hard to put the lap together here, so I think 2 minutes 6. From what I read from the comments, I think that will be a good time for most of you guys. You better get quite a lot out of this lap. Let's have a look, shall we? Okay, going down turn 1, quite close to the wall on the right hand side. Pick the turning point, down to 4th gear. Very easy to run wide here. Just about keep on, have to lift a little bit out of that. It's not ideal. Down to here, we're snatching 2nd. You could take it 3rd if you're one of these guys who likes slightly high gear. Again into here. 2nd or 3rd's doable. But very important, that complex 2, 3, 4. That's where most of the time can be gained on this lap. Right, down into hairpin. Nice, easy braking point here with the cones. Transition here is mega important. Getting off the throttle, off the brakes, and onto the throttle at the right time is absolutely critical. Down we come. Is it Fangio, I think that's called or something. And then, again, we've got the cones to help us with the braking point. Could have been slightly closer to the inside there, but never mind. Watch it through here. First lap, rear can get a bit unstable. Very hard corner. So I think it's Tower. To throw it in, just about escaping the dirt there, but you got to use the track when you can. Now into Le Mans. Very technical, this track. In practice, I was struggling a bit here. I struggle compared to the pros through Le Mans, and just getting the car through here, just very tricky, very tricky. But I know last week I said tricky a lot, but I'll try and use other words as well, if possible. Now down into Sunset. Now, with this setup, actually, Sunset's pretty good. This is one of the rare times where I actually kind of get a bit of oversteer there, and you have to correct and hug the wall to the tyre. I mean, there's a few options. There's a few options through there, but there we go. And that was the 2 minute 2 minute point 6. Right. Let's dive into it in a bit more detail. Okay then, coming down into turn 1, and we want to be on the right hand side, obviously, and as close to the wall as we can. So from far chase we see there's not much margin there, okay? But the closer you get, the faster you'll go. Okay, it's as simple as that. Obviously, even a little brush, a few times I brushed the wall there, you can get away with it. Okay, so don't worry too much. Just make sure you get as close as you can. Now, if you struggle to know how big the car is, essentially, right? There's a few little tips we can use. So again, this window strut for the windscreen comes down, and I can kind of tell that I'm right close to the wall when I've got a little gap there. I do the same with Daytona as well. With Daytona, the last wall, basically the last chicane there, you have to be as close to the wall as you can. So again, I use the reference of the window, and in practice you can just edge closer and closer and closer until you hit the wall, and then right, that's the gap I've got. Okay, so that's a little tip there. What we're looking for here is where this barrier comes along and then it kind of changes this angle. It comes in a bit. So as we see, it's like right here. It actually changed the angle, and that's where we're looking to turn in. So we're braking slightly beforehand, and you cannot brake too hard here. Just if you brake too hard, you're going to go round. Okay, you're going to have a bad time. The guy did it in the actual Sebring 24-hour race, not 24, 12-hour race that just took place this weekend. In the real world, just trading in a bit too hard, ran a bit wide, lost the rear, massive crash, ended up upside down in his Ferrari. So do not do that. Okay. Trading him, 25% at most. As we're coming in, we're looking for this cone up the top, okay? And that is a great little reference. Depending on how you've come into the corner, and unless you do a lot of practice, you're going to come into this corner slightly different every single time because of the way that the bumps are, the way the turning is, the way you trail brake in. It's always going to be slightly different. Like, we aren't pros, okay? We can't just do it the same every single time. So you've got to use the cone as a reference as to, right, I feel like I'm going in a bit too quickly here. I need to brake for a little bit longer. But using the cone, I know that, right, I maybe when I get to the cone, that's my acceleration point. Whereas maybe sometimes you'll come in slower to the corner and you'll think, I've come in a bit too slow here. I've got tons of grip. So using the cone, you then know, well, I can get on the throttle a bit quicker. Now, if I'm teaching you to suck eggs here, I apologize, okay? But, this is a track guide series for, your kind of first step onto the GT3 ladder. So I'm trying to keep things as simple as possible. Okay. So as we see, I'm here just getting back on the accelerator just before the cone. Okay. And I've tried to get back onto full throttle here, but I don't quite have the grip. I'm understeering a little bit wide, so I have to lift off a little bit. Okay. And we are using every single inch of this. Okay. There we go. And if you dip both wheels onto here, you're going to get an off track, okay? It's not end of the world in terms of lap time. If it happens in a race, and it almost certainly will, because when you're following another car, it's really hard through here, and you'll run wide quite often, I think. And to be honest, this is really tricky when you've got a car in front of you to know where this is and where the turning is. And all I can say is it's just about practice and doing it, and you get kind of like a third sense of like, right, now. Because, what I mean, you can't see it otherwise. Or if you know the guy in front's like a good driver, you can just follow what he does. But it's really tricky, okay? Now, this next section is where all the time, not all the time, but a lot of time is made and lost, okay? These corners are crucial. It's so easy to get it wrong. When I first started and I was looking at my telemetry, I mean, I was shocked at how much time I was losing through here. Okay, so we're looking for the 3 cones. We can brake it feels like you're braking just after the 3 cones, but I suppose in reality, you're kind of braking at the 3 cones. Looking at about 75%, but before we turn in, we have to trail off. If you turn in with too much brake, the car's going to come around, okay? So we're coming off, and then we're turning in. And then we're coming off, and we're getting back on throttle before the curb, okay? Again, as I said last week, a lot of corners you've got to accelerate before the apex of the corner, and especially if you're going to ride the bump. If you ride the bump, you have to be on throttle because it lifts the nose up and you can glide over it much easier. The Ferrari takes bumps okay, but it's good practice, and you'll find in a lot of cars, if you're still braking or only just accelerating as you get onto the curb, it's no good. You need to have that nose up in the air. And we've got quite a lot of throttle through here. And again, I did this in second. You could do it in third if you feel more comfortable, okay? Around here. Again, I experimented quite a lot with second and third gear on this corner, for instance. I found I'd be kind of like better into the corner with second, but out the corner with third. So it's a trade-off, okay? Here, it's absolutely critical. You're back across the right-hand side. And then we're kind of looking. There is a little point here. Can you see that? Where it's sort of like a little point, a kind of little arrowhead on the curb. And that is crucial that we get there. Now, you just want to kind of brush it. If you take too much of this curb, that's going to be bad. The car's going to lift up in the air and the rear will come round, okay? And you're going to have to back out and go again, okay? So that's not ideal, okay? So we want to just be brushing it, okay? But, again, power, okay? We're here, and power comes on here, okay? Now, obviously, if you're carrying a bit too much speed in, you're going to have to trail longer and get on later. It is what it is. If you find you've got a bit more grip than you thought, you're going in a bit slower, again, get on it earlier. We have to adjust to each corner. We can't just say, at this point you get back on it, but you definitely want to aim to get on the throttle early here, okay? You're on the throttle early and we're progressive with it. It's very easy to lose the rear here, okay? And we don't want to run out wide. Running out wide here will cost you a lot of time, okay? In turn one, it's not so bad because the next corner is so close. Here, it's different, okay? Here, you will almost certainly lose a lot of time. So, you know, that's fine, okay? This curb is quite aggressive as well. So you might find that if you're sliding a bit and you hit it, that's again going to cause you issues and make you lift out. But as we see, that's absolutely fine. Okay, before we go any further, a few of you were asking for the BLAP and OLAP files. For those of you who don't know what that is basically optimal lap and best lap files. So I've created Discord and they will all be on there along with the videos, and I'll also put like a Q&A thing on there. So if you have any questions about the videos or about driving in general, feel free to post your questions there. So the link for that will be in the description. Okay, coming down into the hairpin. Now, we haven't really talked that much about brake bias before, but this is where I'm going to suggest that if you are going to make a brake bias change on an app, this is where we make it, okay? We don't want to change it too much, but through those first sections of corners and for the last one for sunset, if anything, we want the brake bias slightly further forward. Now, I find with this challenge set, it's actually remarkably good through sunset and through the first corner, so I wouldn't suggest making a brake bias adjustment. If anything, I would maybe keep a 53 through those bits and then put it back, maybe bring it down a few clicks for this next set of corners, basically until you get to sunset, okay? But it's something to experiment with. But I would say that the first few corners and sunset, you're more likely to lose the rear. They're very fast corners we're training in, and if you're struggling with the rear, you might want to more brake bias through there, whereas these next set of corners, you don't want the brake bias forward, okay? So if you have had to move the brake bias forward, bring it back for these corners, okay? It's very, very crucial, okay? So, coming up to the hairpin. This is just all about the braking, really, getting it in at the right point. So we're looking for the 4 cones, and we're going to brake at the 4 cones, okay? Nice and simple, okay? Now, a lot of people talk about overlap, throttle and brake. A little bit is completely fine, okay? But we don't want to be super slow off the throttle and then on the brake really hard because we just overheat everything, okay? So what I do here, you know, where there's just a tiny bit, it's fine, okay? So we're braking. Now, the lights here next to the shift, those are the ABS lights, okay? And you certainly don't want those coming on down here, okay? That said, I think you'd find it very hard to hit the ABS these days in this car because you have to brake extremely hard. I'm braking 80% here and it's nowhere close really. Now, the lights down the bottom here, the spare LH and spare RH, I believe they're wheel slip indicators, okay? So they're giving you a sense of like how much the wheels are kind of like losing grip, okay? So they can flash a bit, that's fine, okay? But if they're flashing like really aggressively, then maybe you're braking a little bit too hard, okay? It's tricky. Obviously, you've got that steering wheel and pedals, okay? Use that. I position mine. If you look at my the video I did from the race at Jerez, I uploaded that. I have mine here, okay? So I have my little steering wheel and my pedals here, and that just means that when going into a corner, I can sometimes glance quickly at my brake just to check that I'm braking to the right pressure, okay? Especially in practice, if you feel like I'm hitting the ABS a lot here, or you know I'm getting tons of wheel slip on the way in, I'll look at my brake in one corner and just say, oh yeah, I'm braking too hard here. Maybe my pedals have gone out of calibration, or I've just got a bit of a lead foot today and I can just bring it back a bit, okay? So we're braking, and then as we kind of get to this different tarmac, we'll start to slowly trail in. Now, the transition here is really important, okay? And what we're talking about that is, as we're coming off the brake and onto the throttle, we want to basically be on the throttle quite snappy, okay? But we don't want any wheel spin, okay? At the same time, we don't want to be too late on it because that will just cost us so much time. So it's knowing exactly when that point is that you can get onto the throttle, okay? It's very important here. And obviously, the more we turn, the less we brake, okay? So we're braking, braking, braking. As we come off, we turn more and more and more. And as the steering wheel turns more, you brake less and less and less until we bring it right down to about 10%. Now, sometimes I quite like to take a bit more of this. You can take a little bit of dirt, okay? And that will sometimes help you turn. Maybe it's less consistent. I don't know. This is fine. I was quite deep into the corner here. I just about managed to get it turned in. Let's see. That's all right. I prefer to be a little bit tighter. Okay. But again, this is where we're turning. We're kind of off the trail brake here. And then as I'm getting on the throttle, it's progressive, and then it's full. Okay. It's full, and there's no kind of wheel slip. You look at my steering wheel, and it's all very progressive, okay? Steering wheel goes, and we are dead on it, okay? A little bit of traction control came in, but, you know, you can't really adjust it that much. So we're just there, and we have to ride this curve on the left here. Now, we don't want to take too much of it, because we'll get too much traction control in, okay? So we don't want to do that. We just want to kind of branch it. You can clip it a little bit. In a lot of other cars, we can kind of take a bit more of it. Like in the LMP2, you can kind of take it quite a lot, but I wouldn't suggest it here. See, we took a little bit. That's fine. Traction control doesn't slow us down too much there. And then we're literally full throttle. And it's the reason why the transition is so important, because actually, from this point here to the next corner is actually a long way. Okay, even though there's corners, they're flat corners, and therefore this acceleration zone is absolutely crucial. Okay, so we're just flat, 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 easy flat, easy flat. Okay, and through here, this will be like a main overtaking spot, because obviously out of the hairpin, people get different kind of exits. If you get a better exit than the car in front, then you've got a great chance into here. Okay. We come in, and we're not looking at the 4 cones here. We're looking more at the 3 cones. Okay. So here, we're going to brake in just before we get to the 3 cones. Okay. So in fact, that's probably more like in between the 2 sets of cones. Okay. We're braking, 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 staying left, then turning in, again, trailing off. I don't quite get to the apex here, but I don't think it costs me too much time. That's not end of the world, okay? And then we're not looking at running wide, okay? We don't want to run all the way to the exit. If you run all the way to the exit, it's going to make the next set of corners tricky, okay? There's that word again. Now, the next double left, although it's flat, it's not easy flat, okay? And it's definitely not easy flat if you're right over here to the left-hand side, okay? So we definitely sacrifice to be on the right-hand side here, okay? In the higher downforce cars, fine, you can get away with that, but in GT3 cars, you need to be on the right-hand side, okay? So here we go, we're turning in, and this corner in particular on the first lap will be really hard, okay? The rear will definitely want to come around here, so you've got to be cautious. There is a lot of runoff. So you come around here, we've got all this runoff, but you just got to edge the car out, okay? Be very careful with the rears. Okay. Now this is a pretty hard corner coming up here, okay? We want to get our braking done in a straight line and set up the exit. And actually, I was doing some work on this corner in the practice session. I saw that on the telemetry, I was kind of a much better when I was focusing on the exit rather than the entry. Okay, it's very easy to have a great entry here and then have a terrible exit. Okay, so got to balance things out a little bit. Okay, so we're looking at the 3 cone. And then as we brake, we're kind of braking in a straight line, but we're braking towards the curb. So we brake, brake, brake. And then as we pass the 1, again, we've got this kind of different tarmac. So we're braking, trying to get as much braking done as we can in a straight line. As we come here, we're coming off the brakes and we're turning in, okay? And that's not too bad. Again, here, apex isn't massively important, okay? Like if you want to obviously get ridiculous alien times, then you probably do need to hit it, but for what we do, that's fine. Okay. And you want to be on the throttle as soon as possible. So again, here, I'm kind of on the throttle there. Okay. And this was just about in time because as we see, I'm kind of taking a little bit too much probably. Yeah. Okay. Now that was fine. It wasn't actually a 1x. It wasn't an off track. And it didn't actually lose me that much time. Okay. But it's probably not optimal. Okay. Into Mon. Again, the trick is braking in a straight line. It's so easy here just to brake and then turn because you're looking for the corner here and you think, oh, I must be able to brake a bit later and just turn in. Braking and turn here is not a good option, okay? So we're braking hard in a straight line and then as we start to turn, we come off the brake a lot, okay? Now here, it's very easy to take too much. Some people suggest getting the right hand wheels, okay, over this side of the curb or the right hand side of the curb. But as you then come off the curb, it will unsettle the car. Okay, you can get a great lap time just taking the curb kind of normally. Okay, but again, we need to get back on the throttle quite quickly. So that is just fine. I mean, and again, we're on the throttle nice and early. So we're coming through here. Again, this will take a lot of practice, this corner. So this is a good place to do the active resets. Okay, so as we come through, full throttle, around here. And don't be lazy here, okay? It's very easy for people just to go follow this line and then turn in. Like, there's a big, long straight called the Ullman Straight after this. We need to open it up as much as we can. This is not an off-track going over to the left. So we use it and abuse it, okay? So we come back over, and as we see, we are quite a long way over. Okay, perfectly fine. Everyone will do this in the top kind of splits. Okay, and then we're looking for the turn in, hit the apex nicely, and use all of the exit. Now here, you can take some of this, okay? So some people will actually run to the right-hand side of this curb. Like, I don't think as long as your left-hand sides are still on the tarmac, you're kind of fine. But again, although it might be slightly quicker, if you nail it, it just unsettles the car a bit too much, okay? Again, on the throttle here is critical, okay? So again, I'm on the throttle before the apex of the corner, and that's because it's just such a long run down the straight, okay? You have to focus on the exit here. So we're kind of balancing the throttle a little bit through the corner, and then we want to be on full throttle and running as wide as we can, okay? You've got to use this. Running a little bit wide isn't in the world in terms of lap time, but you will get up. If you've got a car behind you, then because of the long run, you're just going to get overtaken, basically. So a lot of people as well, you know, if you run wide here, it's a big chance you could lose the rear and end up in the right-hand side wall. Just see it so much, okay? So if you haven't raced it before, be careful of that. And then we're down the final straight, okay? And into probably one of the trickiest corners on the circuit. Now, again, if we have knocked the brake bias back, this is where we then put the brake bias back forward, okay? Now, a lot of cars and a lot of setups, this will be an incredibly hard corner. I think with this setup, it's not actually too bad. Now, this is probably isn't the best example. I tried to set another lap after this to give a better example of how to do this corner, but I couldn't beat this time, so we got this lap. So we're kind of turning in, and we're kind of looking at this two cone. Okay, this two cone's the crucial one, really. We want to come off the outside a little bit, and then start to brake again. We're looking at braking really in a straight line. So we're braking in a straight line, and there's so many ways to do this corner. Okay, some people will go out wide and come back in. Other people will hug the inside a lot more. Okay, as long as we try to get back on the corner, back on the power nice and quickly, that's kind of the main thing, really. So we're braking, and I think I've just trailed in a bit too much brake here. Okay, so this is an example of a bit too much brake, and I've had to correct. So I'm now steering left in a right-hand corner, not ideal. Okay, so I've corrected it, come back in, and now, although this wouldn't be my normal line, because I've had to scrub a lot of speed off, I know now I can basically hold the inside easily. So I'm holding the inside, there is a rather nasty bump kind of under the bridge. So you want to make sure you're kind of like not on full throttle through there if you're still turning heavily. Obviously, if you're coming from a wider angle, it's not a problem. Okay, and we're going through. Now the exit here used to be much worse. They've kind of opened it up and tarmacked it a bit, so it's now a bit easier. But you've got to be careful of the rear. Do it nonetheless with the bumps in particular. You know, you'll feel like it's fine, and then you just hit a little bump, and the car will start to go around. Okay, so you've got to be careful, not too much speed, and it's a run to the line. So I really hope you enjoy this week. It's a fantastic track. It feels fantastic through the wheel. The racing's always really good. It's like wide enough where you're not going to have too many issues. The start is treacherous. Okay, watch out for the start. That turn 1, you'll get 3, maybe 4 wide through it. There'll be cars off on the grass, a car spinning. Be careful. But once the race settles down, it's always absolute fantastic race. So have a blast, guys, and I'll see you next week.